Always sleek and stylish, Jaguar's revised XF executive saloon is now also smart and pragmatic, thanks to the entry-level option of a 2.2-litre four-cylinder diesel engine that will drive sales forward, even in the face of tough competition from rivals like the BMW 5 Series, the Mercedes E-Class and the Audi A6. Ride and handling is class-leading, and this car's sense of occasion is second to none in this segment, which makes it very hard indeed to ignore. Now, there are three real eras in Jaguar history. The first still supports it today, a time of Sir William Lyons and Inspector Morse, of classic cars and legendary Le Mans exploits. The second era, though, was less noticeable, full of models that disappointed the brand and its buyers, and of management decisions that placed style over substance. Take, for example, the unwillingness to develop the diesel power that modern business buyers crave, especially in four-cylinder form. It was hard to understand. Fortunately, though, that period's over. The Coventry marque has entered a new, more relevant, more dynamic and, crucially, more competitive time. The new XJ luxury saloon, launched in 2010, suggested that. This revised XF executive saloon confirms it. Without the XF, you wonder where Jaguar might be today, or indeed if it would exist at all. This has been the bold new face of the brand, and more importantly, the car that has kept its dealers afloat. All the more impressive then that it's been able to do so without the kind of engine that up to 8 in every 10 business sector buyers want, a four-cylinder diesel. Why on earth the car was launched like this would have been the first question that Indian conglomerate Tata would have asked when they took control of Jaguar in 2007, just as the XF was being readied for market. The engineers were dispatched to come up with an answer, quickly. And this is it, the revised XF model launched in the spring of 2011. Smarter inside and out, higher tech, and most notably equipped with an entry-level 2.2-litre four-cylinder diesel engine that from here on in will account for nearly 50% of sales. Now, this car didn't arrive a moment too soon. Since the XF's original launch, all new versions of the leading executive saloons in this segment, Mercedes E-Class, BMW's 5 Series and Audi's A6, have been launched to up the ante in this class. Now, Jaguar says, they'll need to keep a closer eye on the Coventry Cat than ever before. Are they right? Let's find out. Executive sector customers often buy their cars based on their balance sheet performance. Few, though, will select an XF that way. This is a car you choose for the way it makes you feel before you've even gone anywhere. If you haven't tried one before, join me for the Jaguar experience. Get in, and upon entry, the starter button pulses red like a heartbeat. Prod it, and the automatic gearbox selector rises into the palm of your hand while the rotating air conditioning vents somersault into action. It's quite a performance, and you never tire of admiring it. At the same time, though, as you set off, there's a nagging doubt of style over substance. Ahead of you, after all, in this 2.2-litre volume diesel version, lies an engine originally developed to power much humbler cars, Ford Mondeos, Peugeot 508s, Citroën C5s. Can it really be classy enough to power such a quintessential Jaguar, to properly propel a 1.7-tonne executive saloon? Jaguar say that it can, thanks to a considerable programme of refettling, which has involved lower friction pistons, a new camshaft, a water-cooled turbo, and a copious programme of soundproofing to achieve the kind of silence that Coventry customers expect. The 190 PS result is quite something. A car as fast and as quiet as the original 2.7-litre V6 diesel XF was, and capable of travelling up to 15 further miles on each gallon, with CO2 figures that are in a different league. And a car, it must be pointed out, that's £5,000 cheaper than that XF model was way back in 2008. At no point on the move in this car does it occur to you that there are only 4 cylinders under the bonnet, which means that here the price of progress has a very pleasant ring to it indeed. Are all those ratios really necessary in a car with a prodigious 450 Newton meters of torque? Probably not, and there are times when accelerating hard, when under the weight of the heavy body shell, the gearbox swaps cogs a little more often than you'd like for really relaxed progress. But so silky smooth and seamless are the changes that most won't really mind. The few that do still have the option to select one of the 3-litre V6 diesel engines fitted to the pre-facelift version of this car, developing either 240 or 275 PS. The faster of the two, capable of rest to 60 in just 5.9 seconds, on the way to a maximum speed that has to be artificially reined in at 155 miles an hour. Which makes it hard to think why anyone would really consider the 385 PS 5-litre normally aspirated petrol V8 variant, even if they couldn't be bothered with benefit-in-kind taxation. Where this big V8 does make some sort of sense is in the flagship XFR Super Saloon, where a supercharger boosts its output to 510 PS so that it can take on such as BMW's M5 and Mercedes E63 AMG. Now both of these two cars offer more power, but they can't match this Jaguar's brilliant balance of sharp handling and cosseting ride. No other executive sector saloon can, and it's an attribute just as evident in the 2.2D model that I'm driving here. Actually, come to think of it, this variant is even better in that respect. Because it gets the smallest and lightest XF engine, the front end is lighter too, which makes it feel especially agile on twistier roads. There's optional adaptive damping, but you don't really need it. This car will be as comfortable on your favourite B-road blast as it will be soaking up the motorway miles. The original XF, as launched in 2008, was a beautiful car, a shape you'd be frightened to aesthetically fiddle with. But Jaguar design director Ian Callum wasn't, and somehow the improvements made to this revised version managed to create a far more stylish interpretation of the 2007 CXF concept car it was originally based upon. It now has the kind of front end that owners might like to have seen from the beginning, with a redesigned grille, a more streamlined bonnet, sleeker front wings, and perhaps most notably some bifunction HID xenon headlamps that resemble those on the larger XJ Saloon, that come complete with a strip of LED jewel-like daytime running lights arranged in a J pattern. Inside, not much being wrong, there wasn't a great deal to fix. The rotary auto gear selector still rises into the palm of your hand on startup as the dashboard air vents acrobatically pirouette into position to greet you. Only those very familiar with the XF will recognise the more supportive seats, the smarter satin feel switchgear, and the classier graphics on the 7-inch central screen that marshals most of the major dashboard functions. Relax inside an XF, and from the stitched leather dashboard and door cappings to the aluminium and wood furnishings, it really does feel special. The craftsmanship, attention to detail and materials all impress. Jaguar's designers have sought to find more interesting ways to say luxury, and largely their efforts have worked. The lines are clean and pure, the materials familiar, but with a very modern flavour, from soft grain leather to real wood veneer with a bold contemporary spin. Even the phosphor blue interior lighting has its own mood. Unfortunately, it would have taken more than a midlife facelift to free up any more space at the rear. The coupe-like rear styling tells here. Once you get inside though, there's slightly more space than the flowing exterior lines might lead you to expect, even if boxier rivals can do better. There's really only room for 2 adults here thanks to the prominent central transmission tunnel, and headroom may be at a premium for the tallest occupants. Jaguar, though, is unapologetic on this front, pointing out the undeniable fact that for most potential buyers, as long as rear seat space is adequate, then rear luggage room and styling represent higher priorities. Just as well, then, that there's a reasonable amount of boot space at 500 litres, even if this figure can't quite match that offered by obvious rivals. If that isn't enough, you can at least push forward the rear seat backs, extending the luggage bay out to 923 litres. Even though this Jaguar now has this crucial four-cylinder diesel engine, it will never match the sales figures of obvious executive saloon rivals without things like a manual gearbox option, a more affordable range of petrol variants, or an estate body style. Still, that will necessarily keep XF sales figures on the exclusive side, something owners seem to like. And those owners will be buying into this volume 2.2D model at a price span somewhere between £30,000 and £43,000. Now, at the bottom end of that spectrum, you'll be looking at paying a similar figure to that demanded by obvious rivals like BMW's 520D, Audi's A6 2-litre TDI, or Mercedes E220 CDI, all of which offer slightly less power. Now, if you want 3-litre V6 diesel grunt in your XF, then you're looking at budgeting from a little under the £40,000 mark for the 240 PS version of this car. And that's priced comparably to obvious rivals like BMW's 530D, Audi's A6 3-litre TDI, and Mercedes E350 CDI. But all of those rivals have slightly higher outputs. And if driving one of those leaves you yearning for a bit more grunt in your V6 diesel XF, then you can always uprate to the 275 PS version of the V6 diesel engine, though that will demand from you a £6,000 premium over the lesser V6 diesel variant. In the unlikely event that you're looking at the 385 PS 5-litre normally aspirated petrol V8 XF, then you'll be comparing it to rivals like BMW's 550i or Mercedes E500, both of which are slightly more expensive. While at the top of the range, the XFR Super Saloon uses that same V8 engine in supercharged form to put out 510 PS, and Jaguar will demand £65,000 from you or so for that car, but that is £8,000 less than you pay for a Mercedes E63 AMG. Now, whichever XF model you choose, this 2.2D diesel, the 3-litre V6 diesel with 240 or 275 PS, or even the petrol 5-litre V8 in normally aspirated or supercharged forms, whichever of those models you go for, you should find your XF to be very well equipped, to a level certainly superior to that of its German rivals, model for model. So expect to find right across the range things like leather seats with suede cloth inserts, air conditioning, an 8-speed automatic gearbox with paddle shifters, a decent quality 400 watt CD stereo system with controls on the leather stitched steering wheel. There's also a multi-function touchscreen to marshal all the dashboard controls, alloy wheels and xenon headlamps with power washers. Go for a really plush trim level and you can expect to find everything from 18-way electrically adjustable seats to a 1200 watt Bowers and Wilkins sound system. Options include a rear seat video entertainment system, a vehicle tracking system and body styling kits to enable your humble 2.2D to look for all the world like a rip-snorting XFR. Now, unfortunately, some of the really high-tech safety options are limited to the options list or really pricier trim variations, but all models do get twin front, side and curtain airbags, anti-whiplash head restraints, and the usual electronic intervention for stability, traction and braking. Plus there's a bonnet that pops up in a collision to protect pedestrians. No apologies here for concentrating on that 2.2 litre diesel engine again, because it's set to grab the lion's share of XF sales. It is, without doubt, able to make this car the most efficient Jaguar yet made. It gives it an operating range of over 800 miles from the 69.5 litre fuel tank, and that's enough to be able to drive from Coventry to Munich without filling up. And if you need reassurance that this engine, originally developed for a Ford Mondeo, is fit to grace an executive class Jaguar saloon, then perhaps you'll find it in the fact that it's a unit also fitted to Range Rover's stylish Evoque, a car that retails for similar money. Impressively, it's rather more frugal under the bonnet of this XF, despite the fact that here it's mated to an 8-speed automatic gearbox. And that last point is important. It's easy to talk about lower running costs, after all, for German rivals to this car, BMW's 520d, Mercedes E220 CDI or Audi's A6 2-litre TDI, without realising that for a proper like-for-like comparison, you need to be comparing them to this Jaguar in their automatic guises. Once you do so and pitch this XF 2.2D's 52.3 combined cycle fuel consumption reading and 149 grams per kilometre of CO2 figure against the competition, you find that of the obvious rivals, only BMW's 5 Series, the 520D, is significantly better, probably about 26 grams per kilometre of CO2 better, although it only takes you another couple of miles further on the combined cycle reading. As for the other rivals, well, Mercedes E220 CDI in automatic form is actually dirtier and thirstier than this Jaguar, while Audi's A6 2-litre TDI Multitronic falls somewhere between the two. Ultimately, you'll have to do your own benefit-in-kind taxation sums and make a call on this. But even if that ends up needing for you to pay a slight premium for Jaguar ownership, I'm guessing that many owners will want to do that in return for the more dynamic driving experience, the greater levels of equipment, and the plusher feeling of luxury. This engine uses what Jaguar call an intelligent stop-start system, cutting the power plant when you don't need it, when you're stuck at the lights, or when you're fuming in heavy traffic. The intelligent bit is a reference to the seamlessness of the start-stop setup's operation and functionality that enables a driver to walk away from a temporarily stopped car, automatically putting the vehicle in park and turning off the engine. What else? Well, another reason for buying this 2.2D model is the fact that it'll be much cheaper to insure. V6 and V8 XF variants do, after all, sit in groupings of between 43 and 49. And this entry-level diesel, like those variants, will enjoy the same relatively affordable servicing and high residual values. Now, the teutonically dominated executive saloon sector is full of very impressive offerings. But it's easy to be impressed by something without necessarily liking it very much. An XF, even in this frugal 2.2-litre diesel guise, might not have the last nth of efficiency you'd find in a rival BMW 5 Series or Audi A6, but for an increasing number of business buyers, it's the car they'd rather have on their driveways. The reasons why aren't easy to explain if you haven't driven one, so if you're in this market, I'd suggest you do exactly that. From the dramatic performance on startup to a ride and handling balance in a different league from something like a Mercedes E-Class, this XF has a charm you can't help warming to, just as a Jaguar should have. It looks stunning, and this entry-level diesel, the version most will choose, is good enough not to make you wish you'd opted for one of the bigger engines further up the range. As is this model as a whole, the machine it should have been at launch, and the car that will shape Jaguar's future.